Time for our greetings from the Garden State segment here on Jersey Magazine with Mike Hammond. Mike, let me ask you a question. Who is
Ready.
Matty Carlock?
So Matty Carlock is he's a lot of things for sure. He's a musician, he's a producer, an artist. He's done a lot of things in the music world. And honestly, so we recorded that episode the same day that we recorded the Felipe Rose episode. And both of these episodes, I could have gone for another 3 hours on each of them. They wound up being over an hour each. But Matty has such like an interesting story and background. He's from the Asbury Park area, came up, started screaming in like screamo punk rock bands when he was 14, and then was like living in his car and all this stuff. I mean, it's really like a crazy story, and then kind of see like where he's gone to at this point in his career is really incredible.
And I have to point out that question, who is Matty Carlock, is actually part of a two-video series on YouTube where it kind of explores some of what you were just talking about. Originally from New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, he's in California, near Los Angeles these days.
Yeah, he
And
lives near LA. Yeah.
he just posted something saying that as far as he knows, because he's been back in New Jersey for a little while, as far as he knows, his home and everything out there in Los Angeles is safe, which has to be crazy to be 3,000 miles away,
Yeah.
hearing and seeing, as we all are, what's going on in Los Angeles with those fires recently, and wondering if there's going to be anything to return home to.
Yeah, so I met Maddie back in December in Asbury Park because I was at the Telegraph Hill Records. They do an end of the year event at Wonder Bar called What a Wonderful Year. So I did a show from there and met Maddie, and we talked for a little bit. And I knew he was from LA. This is before the fires really started. And then when we did the episode, I had like forgotten that he was like living in LA now. And he said that he left, he like got on the plane, flew to Jersey, was going to be here till I think he just went back, or he's going back soon. And he's like, the one thing that I'm so happy that I took was my hard drive, but he left everything else there. And then just to, it must be like a very helpless feeling. But, talking to people that he knew there, obviously, and, luckily everything was okay for him. And, definitely one of the lucky ones for sure.
As you were doing your research into Matty Carlock, what stood out most about him to you?
Uh, Talking honestly, it wasn't so much the research that I did, it was talking to other people that I knew like in that scene, like people like Joe Pomerico, Jeff Crespi, like other people that are in that world that do a variety of things. And I mentioned Maddie's name, and they're like, Maddie's a psycho, dude. Like, it was just one of those things where just like you talk about obsession with your craft and just doing literally every single thing like to make like a gain a little bit of ground, and then the right place, right time, all that kind of stuff. But definitely, like I remember Jeff Crespi, who's a photographer in that area, and I mentioned Maddie's name to him, and he was like, "I've been photographing Maddie since he was 14, on stages and all that kind of stuff." And he was like, "That kid is a maniac," and just like you talk, like obsession gets thrown out. That word gets thrown out quite a bit, but literally, 4 or 5 years, never coming home, staying on the road with just his gig bag, his guitar, traveling the United States, sleeping in his car, sleeping on sidewalks, just to like get in front of the right people. And eventually he did.
It sounds like a modern day Woody Guthrie almost.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. I mean, just like literally eating, breathing, sleeping music and all the stuff that he's done. I mean, like I mentioned, the screamo hardcore punk rock scene that he was in when he was younger. Then he went into like the folk scene. Then he went into hip hop, and he's done stuff with Fetty Wap and some other, notable artists, around the country. And it just, it's a really, I just was like, I didn't expect myself to be like waiting on every word of each story that he told me. It was like I knew we were going to talk about some stuff. I figured we go like 30 minutes, but as soon as he started talking, I was like, this guy could A, tell a story, which is important, but B, he has stories to tell, which is incredible.
And he tells those stories so well in his music. And as you just mentioned, I mean, the diversity in his music. He goes from Woody Guthrie or Nebraska era Springsteen, if you will, to
Yep.
stuff like Fetty Wap. And then the next thing you know, he's doing an Americana roots thing, much like Ryan Adams or what Robert Plant has been doing with Alison Krauss on his records. There's no way to pigeonhole this guy.
Yeah, there's really not. And I think, it's one of those things where like we talk about obsession and I think it's a love for just music and an appreciation of what goes into like the artistic mindset of an artist, and I think like when you start breaking that down and you're seeing like how different ways that he's expressing himself. It's like a Renaissance man kind of thing, just like doing all kinds of things in music and making them quality and making them good and getting them out to people and knowing every layer of the business. It's impressive for sure.
How did you hear about him?
At that What a Wonderful Year event. We met there because he was playing on the spotlight stage. He said that he showed up. He didn't have a guitar. He didn't really know what songs he was going to be playing, and he brought in a couple like a local Asbury Park rapper. He brought on Bobby Mahoney. He brought on Jared Clemens, and just like did this like kind of punk rock vibey kind of acoustic set, and it was just like they were bringing people up singing Atlantic City, singing all these other songs that, they had written together in the past, and just made it like a kind of a fun experience. And then afterwards, we were talking a little bit more, and I was blown away by that whole show, but I was particularly impressed with what he was able to do on like the smaller stage, which is like off to the side, just having an acoustic guitar and being able to command a room like that. And I was like, I got to talk more to this guy. He just seems interesting.
As I was checking out some of his music, both just the recorded stuff that he's done and some videos, the name John Ginty came to mind, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with John.
John
John's from
Ginty
up
from
here.
like Morristown, the piano
Yes.
player. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's from up here. And John has worked with all kinds of different artists, from Redman to the Dixie Chicks, now the Chicks, to
Yep.
the Allman Betts Band. I mean, he's just all over the musical spectrum. And
Yeah.
Matty Carlock reminded me an awful lot of John.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen John once, I think, at MPAC in Morristown, and I forget who he was even playing with. This is a terrible story now. But I forget who he was even playing with. But I remember people in the crowd, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to. It might have been like the Wood Brothers or something like that. And then they had him there playing piano, and people were like, oh my God, like John Ginty's playing piano tonight. I was like, I don't even know who John Ginty is. But then, like, learning more about him after that day, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And that is a really good comparison. Like playing with a lot of people, connecting to a lot of different genres of music and just being a musician. Really, that's really what
Hmm.
it comes down to, a musician.
And as I'm both of these, Matty Carlock and John Ginty, you get to the point where you think, well, what's rock and roll?
Yeah.
We go through that debate all the time. Oh, this isn't rock and roll when they come out with whoever's being inducted or not being inducted, as the case may be, into the Rock Hall of Fame. And the lines get so blurred, which is one of the things that I love about music, when lines do get blurred.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's like. I think we use this example in the episode, and I don't know if you and I have talked about this before, but like the idea, like when you were like when I was coaching back in college, like when you wanted to recruit athletes, baseball players that played other sports in the season because that just made them appreciate different parts of sport differently and different athletic skills and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it's like a similar kind of thing. Like you just learn more about other genres of music and you're not just like one track mind kind of thing. That is rock and roll, like let's just do it. And it's just talks about protest song, talks about, how sticking it to the man and all that kind of stuff. And it's just to me, it's it's hard to really even explain it. But Maddie does a great job on the episode.
So you can find out the answer to who is Matty Carlock coming up this week on Greetings from the Garden State. And you can do that on greetingsfromthegardenstate.com. Thanks, Mike Ham. I'm looking forward to this one.
Thanks, Jim.